Hello, everybody out there in radio land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. As always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 WIDR or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may turn out to be. Um, if you're just tuning in, this is our weekly news program. We come in and tell you what is really going on here in the city of Kalamazoo, the state of Michigan, the so-called United States, and that's our tagline, and it's particularly pertinent today, and the rest of the world from a working class perspective. Um, Obviously, we're going to be talking about what just happened yesterday. And we're also going to be hitting on, again, going to do a little retrospect talking about Joe Biden's administration, do a little bit of a damage report of where we're at, day two of, Biff Tannen fascism round two, as we call it. Uh, so with that, I do also want to acknowledge a couple of things. Yesterday was Martin Luther King Day. And I hope that didn't get kind of lost in the shuffle with all the other really big news that was going on. And I should be joined by my co-host in a little bit here, but before they hop on, I thought I would start today's program by reading a particularly important article that I stumbled upon over on TruthOut, kind of, again, linking what is going on uh, this week with that legacy of resistance that, again, Martin Luther King spearheaded and was, again, all of the civil rights movement was really about. So this is an article from TruthOut. And I'm hoping that for y'all, again, try not to cede ourselves to despair. Rather, use what is going on to fuel your resistance. And this was written by Nicholas Powers. It was published on January 19th. MLK's legacy is one of class struggle. To fight Trump, we must carry his torch. This Martin Luther King Jr. Day will be sworn into office. Working in concert, Trump, the Republican-led House and Senate, and the right-wing Supreme Court threatened to dismantle King's legacy. If they do, the most vulnerable people in the United States, black folks in particular, will be attacked. The blueprint for this assault is Project 2025. The symbolism of Trump being inaugurated on MLK Jr. Day is chilling. Is King's legacy dead? How can we be observing MLK Day by handing power to a politician who ran a blatantly racist campaign to be the first black woman to have run as a major party's presidential nominee? Has the goal of transforming the United States from a white ethno-state into a multiracial democracy been vanquished? If so, does that leave us plunging headlong into a permanent Republican oligarchy? King's life and martyrdom have been split in two. The dominant one is the I Have a Dream King. He appears on Apple ads. He is the apostle for nonviolent direct action to end racial segregation. The lesser known king, the one repressed from official celebration, is the 1968 radical, who was an anti-poverty and anti-war democratic socialist. We need that legacy of King to build a working class, progressive supermajority that can fight the cruel agenda of Project 2025. On Inauguration Day, Trump will place his hand on the Bible and be sworn into office. The ceremony will take place on the west front of the U.S. Capitol. Well, actually, it took place inside the U.S. Capitol. And again, there's some, obvious historical irony to that. They'll be sworn in as jubilant Republicans plan to cut the federal budget. They want to cut poor people from social services, the sick from healthcare and undocumented workers from the country with immigration and customs enforcement raids. They come armed with a plan. Project 2025, a 900 plus page tome of conservative policy crafted by the Heritage Foundation. When you look at it closely, you see more than budget cuts. It is a plan to institutionalize conservatism. It is state sponsored, widespread suffering. In contrast to Trump's swearing into office just 2 miles away at the Lincoln Memorial, King gave the I Have a Dream speech in the 1963 March on Washington. Nearby is the reflecting pool, where after King's murder in 1968, the Poor People's Campaign built Resurrection City, a protest camp to make visible the multiracial poor. In downtown D.C. sits a massive statue of King called the Stone of Hope, engraved with his speeches. D.C. is filled with the King's history. The man's life was dedicated to expanding the circle of citizenship. Trump's inauguration on MLK Jr. Day highlights the clash of two opposing visions. MAGA wants to rebuild walls of racism, patriarchy, and classism, even ending birthright citizenship. And again, if you're paying attention to the flurry of executive orders that came out of the Trump administration yesterday, that was one of them. The left has fought to enlarge the circle of citizenship and include people of color, women, workers, and LGBTQ folks. But the right has the White House, Senate, House, and Supreme Court. I like one big, beautiful bill. Trump recently bragged at a news conference. His reconciliation bill, scheduled for April, can pass the Senate with a simple majority. It is the first step to Project 2025, and it's a whopper. First up is the renewal of Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, basically tax cuts for the rich to the tune of $4 trillion. Think about it. The government will have $4 trillion less to fund services. Next are additional funds for ICE to brutally deport undocumented workers. What is obscene is that Republicans plan to plug the hole left by those tax cuts with $5 trillion in budget cuts. And the cuts are sure to keep coming. Trump's blueprint is Project 2025, which aims to take a chainsaw to programs that help the poor. Medicaid will be cut and the spending left to states. Project 2025 calls the U.S. Department of Agriculture a welfare agency and plans to cut SNAP, also known colloquially as food stamps, and school meal programs. Project 2025 aims to dismantle the Department of Education and end federal aid to low-income schools. On housing, it calls for an end to the Housing Trust Fund, a federal grant to states to alleviate chronic homelessness. Project 2025's plan for the Department of Justice is to shift its focus to prosecuting officials, colleges, and private businesses that promote social justice. To cap it off, Project 2025 plans to remove any federal workers that get in the way of Trump's agenda by using Executive Order Schedule F, which makes tens of thousands of them replaceable with Trump loyalists. Project 2025 is an attack on workers, on the racialized or the racially marginalized, on LGBTQ people and the poor. It will cause mass suffering and death. How? The U.S. has 304 million citizens. The Poor People's Campaign calculates 140 million are poor and working poor, and 47 million go hungry, including 14 million children. At the bottom of this cruel class oppression are 771,800 unhoused people. All of this kills. The Journal of the American Medical Association cited poverty as the fourth leading cause of death in the U.S. each year, as 183,000 people die from poverty-related causes, and nearly 45,000 die because they have no health insurance. Project 2025 is an assault on vulnerable people. Trump and the Republicans are threatening to push the hungry deeper into hunger. They will make the sick sicker, and many, if you follow the math, inevitably will die. Project 2025 is racist because poverty in the United States is racialized. 21% of indigenous people are poor, along with 17% of Black people and 16% of Latinos. Project 2025 is also a trap. Republican budget cuts and extremist policies will compel people to protest them. Marches will roll like waves and hit the wall of police and draconian laws that Trump builds around his government. Anger will spike in the streets. When a window is broken or a police car is torched, the trap is sprung. Trump says he is eager to send in riot police or the military. He's already given a wink to far right groups like the Proud Boys that like to break bones. And as many of you know, he pardoned something like 1,500 such goons yesterday. This is why we have to turn to King again. His radical legacy is a blueprint to avoid the trap and defeat Project 2025. In April 1963, an incarcerated King wrote the Letter from Birmingham Jail to push back against white moderates who feared conflict. He wrote, "I am not afraid of the word tension. I have earnestly opposed violent tension, but there is a type of constructive nonviolent tension which is necessary for growth. We must create the kind of tension in society that will help men rise from the dark depths of racism to the majestic heights of understanding and brotherhood." In May 1963, his ideas came to life. King created tension not only from nonviolent direct action, but also from contrasting widely accepted values against less accepted ones. In this case, the universal value of children's innocence versus white supremacy. Firefighters in Birmingham, Alabama shot high-powered fire hoses at children. Police let dogs loose to tear at their clothes and skin. White supremacist and Commissioner of Public Safety Bull Connor ordered the assault on the 1963 Children's Crusade in Birmingham, in which thousands of black children walked downtown to protest segregation. They were arrested and thrown in jail where they sang freedom songs. Reporters filmed it. The world saw the news and was shocked. A moribund civil rights movement was re-energized. We can learn from King how to maneuver from a position of weakness. The civil rights movement faced hostile officials that used violence to suppress protests. We face similar threats under Trump and the Republican trifecta. King faced a hostile public raised on anti-black racism. We likewise now face a public turned against quote-unquote wokeness. King faced interlocking laws from legal segregation, redlining, and a racist criminal legal system. We face Project 2025, which seeks to recreate, to a degree, the state-sanctioned discrimination that our ancestors fought to end. Project 2025 and the second Trump administration will surely set the stage for more protests. Again, images of families torn apart by government officials may soon spark rage. News of increased poverty and hunger will likely direct disgust at Trump and the GOP. Protests and lawsuits may dampen the Trump administration temporarily, but it is not enough. We must go beyond political trench warfare and build a progressive supermajority. Here's where we must shift from the I have a dream king to the later, more radical king. He realized the integration of Black people was just the first step. Next was to integrate the poor and working class as well, which is why in 1966 he told his staff that the U.S. must move towards a democratic socialism. Integration did not mean marginalized people transform themselves to fit into the U.S. mainstream. No, for King it meant that everyone has a place at the table. Capitalism must be replaced with democratic socialism, in which people are integrated by a government that answers their needs for food, housing, and jobs with dignity. That's why in 1968, King marched in Memphis with striking sanitation workers and told them in a sermon, "Whenever you are engaged in work that is at the service of humanity, it has dignity and worth. You are reminding the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages." We must now pick up the baton from the radical king of 1968. His legacy pulls the rug from under even the most powerful and violent regimes. King's political adherents use this tactic of contrasting widely accepted values in sociology known as consensus values to less accepted ones. The goal is to make clear that most Americans already were progressive. And I must do a quick little interruption of me reading this article. That is empirically true, according to data. Despite what we saw at the election, most Americans support progressive policy. Most Americans want a higher minimum wage. Most Americans want federal protections for workers. State after state, even states that went to Trump when there were progressive policies on the ballot, they got a vast majority of support. I even want to turn slightly to, and again, this is one of the most deeply disturbing things coming out of Trump's first couple days in office, and you can certainly see it in you know the reactions of a lot of my trans friends and colleagues to what has been going on in the last couple days. Um, one of my friends, or at least somebody I know, there was a sentiment that like the whole country is against us, etc. And I do want to remind people that again, we can go back to this data, and the majority of Americans do believe that trans people are discriminated against. They are not on this same kind of line. There is no mandate to oppress trans people. However, much like King said, it is kind of the fault of the white moderate, the moderate who either thought we should capitulate to transphobia to wrest electoral victory from Trump, or again, the moderates who voted for Trump while either ignoring the anti-trans bigotry or simply not pay enough attention to know what a palpable fear it was for people in those communities. That is really the big failure. The biggest failure of America right now is it is not necessarily that everyone has turned into a bigot. It is the fault of the moderate who's allowed these kinds of politics to take root at the very center of power, who either did not care enough or did not pay enough attention to trans people to understand the existential threat that the Trump administration represented. Because Trump himself, let's make no mistake, the man really doesn't have any ideological principles, but he does know that the people who are going to get him elected, the people who are going to knock on doors for him, the people who are going to give him money, did have those picadillos. Keep in mind, Elon Musk, the vice Führer or whatever you want to call him these days, um, he is one of the biggest transphobes on the internet, and he is ostensibly at the seat of power. And it doesn't really matter because again, you might have some conservative relatives like, oh, Trump doesn't really care about that. It doesn't matter if he cares about that. The people who bought and paid for him care about that stuff. Of course, again, I mean, not to sidetrack us too much, but again, like remember to the bitterness that this bigotry comes from. Elon Musk hates trans people because he has a trans daughter, and he's brainwashed himself into thinking that they somehow brainwashed her. He again he hates uh, he hates trans people largely because he's a bad father who went through a midlife crisis, and he wants to blame everybody but himself. And of course, when that person happens to be the richest man on the planet, that's going to make waves and have impacts on everyone. I do want to give a bit of there was a sterling bit of advice for my trans listeners and friends of trans listeners. I think I really want them to take to heart. This is somebody on Twitter, Alejandra Caraballo, who wrote this. These executive orders on banning federally funded entities from recognizing trans people or disallowing them from using the bathroom are not self-executing or immediately enforceable. They require formal rule making at a minimum. They are a scare tactic. Ignore and do not comply in advance. Do not comply in advance. Those are probably the key words there. Do not do the devil's work for him. Until there are legally enacted Rules under the APA that are upheld by the courts do not obey in advance. These are meant to intimidate trans people. It won't work. We will not go away or disappear. Deal with it. Going back to the article about Martin Luther King now, Reverend Jesse Jackson thundered in his climatic 1988 Democratic Convention speech, "What's the moral challenge of our day? We have public accommodations. We have the right to vote. We have open housing. What's the fundamental challenge of our day? It is to end economic violence." He evoked a powerful image. Most poor people are not lazy. They are not black. They are not brown. They are mostly white and female and young. But whether white, black, or brown, a hungry baby's belly turned inside out is the same color. Color it pain, color it hurt, color it agony. In 2016, Anderson Cooper asked Senator Bernie Sanders about his spirituality. Sanders said, "I believe as a human being that the pain one person feels, if we have children who are hungry, if we have elderly people who can't afford their prescription drugs, that impacts you and that impacts me. My spirituality is that we are all in this together." Jackson and Sanders use King's strategy of turning class warfare into a spiritual struggle between good and evil. Since class cuts across race and gender, it becomes a powerful leverage to topple a corrupt Trump administration the way that King toppled a corrupt Southern white supremacy, and to go further and build a supermajority. The Democratic Party's liberal politics will fail unless there is a call for economic justice. We are in a two-front struggle. The Congressional Black Caucus, the NAACP, and the ACLU are preparing to fight Trump in the courts and at the ballot box. Yet the neoliberal Democratic Party is exhausted. Now the left has a historic chance to follow King's footsteps and mobilize the poor and workers to say clearly that integration means recognizing the working class, the janitors, mass transit drivers, nurses, and undocumented day laborers who make life possible. For King, the Memphis strike wasn't just a class conflict. It was a spiritual struggle to redeem humanity. We are not fully realized until we accept responsibility for the relationships we are in with others. That's why King marched with the sanitation workers. All around you is the world our forebears in the civil rights movement created for us. Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass are here, Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer, and Martin Luther King Jr. They're still here, marching in spirit, and they're still leading us. That again, that was an article from TruthOut, written by Nicholas Powers. MLK's legacy is one of class struggle. To fight Trump, we must carry his torch. Y'all listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. Just a quick reminder, you can find us online. We are at, you can find us on Facebook. Yeah, we're gonna stay around there. I don't care. You can Zuckerberg can he can invite as many fascists and bigots as he wants. We're gonna stay at our post. We're also on YouTube, and you can also find our podcast on most podcasting apps. That's Media Cyphers Kalamazoo. You can listen to our show at the convenience of whatever time that you would like to listen to it. Keep your dial locked. We will be right back. We're just going to take a quick little break. This is Media Cyphers, your source for political revolution. Hello again, everybody out there in Radio Land. It's once again Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. So I think the next thing we're going to do here, still waiting to see if my co-host is going to be able to join me. We'll see. But I did want to dive into another article here. This comes to us from LeftVoice. And I thought this would be kind of important. I know, again, a lot of us are just, it's only day two, and many of us are already just exhausted from the kind of fascist onslaught coming from the Trump administration. But there's a really good article from LeftVoice that I think really highlights some of the chinks in the Trump administration's armor. And not only kind of their internal divisions, but opportunities for organizers, uh, people on the left to kind of you know expose those contradictions and opportunities for organizing and education. So this is written by Sybil Davis and Jiminy Vergara. Trump has no mandate, and his incoming administration is full of contradictions. It's published on January 17th. Just days away from the start of the second Trump term, the incoming administration is overflowing with contradictions. The Republicans have been tasked with representing the broad grouping of the right and capital that united around Trump while he was still having many key disagreements with each other. In that sense, the incoming government stands on potentially shaky ground of internal disagreements and contradictions. This is notable because technically the GOP is in a moment of great strength. The party essentially holds all three branches of government. Yet there is disagreement within the ranks of congressional Republicans over how to approach this new moment and what the best strategy is for achieving Trump's priorities. For Trump's part, he's been dismissive of specific strategic debates, instead, just putting emphasis on how he wants to get his legislative priorities done. Indeed, the lack of clarity goes further as Republicans are even divided on what these priorities ought to be. The lack of cohesion reveals how unstable the Trump coalition is. Another important factor is in the incoming political situation is that the bourgeoisie is playing a very open role in the Trump government, with Elon Musk having the president's ear in an unprecedented way. This reveals the character of the Trump government and allows critics to, as Joe Biden did in his farewell address, compare Trump's incoming government to an oligarchy. But by the way, I do want to. We're going to be talking about Biden a little bit later in the show, but it's like y'all, we've been in an oligarchy. That ain't new, um, but it's definitely all mask off. We'll be talking about that later, but yeah. The fissures within the government can provide opportunities for class struggle to play a major role, and we should not take the Trump program as a fait accompli. Class struggle can disrupt it, but it might also fall apart because of internal disagreement. When looking at the Trump administration, it can be, as The Economist writes, useful to divide Mr. Trump's um, uh, acolytes into three groups: conservative mainstreamers, America firsters, and tech tycoons. And in many cases, there is an overlap. Most agree that America needs fewer regulations, smaller government, lower taxes, less immigration, and a tougher stance on foreign opponents. Virtually all bring extensive experience, whether in government or the private sector, to the table, but their priorities and prescriptions vary wildly. Indeed, many of the promises that Trump based his successful campaign on face obstacles within the government, and whatever he accomplishes will be the result of negotiations among factions. Should the government offer more or fewer H-1B visas? Should a full-on trade war with China be opened? What should the political priorities be? These are just some of the questions that are dividing sectors of Trump world, creating fractures within the government and between the leaders of the MAGA movement and its base. For instance, the MAGA movement is already in conflict with Musk around high-skilled immigrants and tech monopolies. In general, the MAGA base is significantly more populist than the Trump government is shaping up to be. The movement is specifically concerned with getting back to the old days, while the tech right wingers are focused on forging a new society based on profoundly right wing capitalist concepts. Got it going down. I'm going to skip ahead a little in the article. A key element of Trump's campaign is being shown to be the farce that it always was. Trump ran as the anti war candidate and as someone who would keep the U.S. out of foreign entanglements. Yet the last few weeks have seen him provoke several different countries and reveal himself to be poised as an imperialist in chief. Yes, again, much to my somewhat shock, I honestly thought that was just goofy nonsense coming out of Trump's brain about Panama and Greenland and stuff, but he's serious. He is 100% serious about that, apparently. Going on, with a speech laden with the imperial epic of manifest destiny, Trump threatened to take control of the Panama Canal by armed force if necessary and buy Greenland. Trump may be blustering, but he is undoubtedly presenting himself as a Caesarist solution to the crisis of historic decline of American imperialism with renewed imperial aspirations. It appears that Trump will put extreme pressure on traditional U.S. allies to force them to negotiate on his terms and make them put far more resources into the common interests of preventing China and Russia from advancing. In the Middle East, Trump has the advantage that the state of Israel advanced in the genocide, the destruction of Gaza, and the annexation of the West Bank on the one hand, and in the extreme weakening of the so called axis of resistance that contributed to the fall of Assad on the other. All of this can be used by Trump to reinforce his unconditional support for the greater Israel project that Prime Minister Netanyahu is pursuing. The ceasefire agreement that was reached seemingly after Trump put pressure on the Netanyahu government is a sign of the two-handed approach that the incoming president is taking. He's putting pressure on allies to resolve the open conflicts, the genocide and the war in Ukraine, in order for the U.S. to refocus on the Indo-Pacific, Latin America, and China. Trump has zero interest in stopping the genocide in Gaza. His pushing of Netanyahu has to do with the urgency of U.S. imperialism to be able to focus on the strategic battles to come. Although, even with a ceasefire, the situation in the Middle East is extremely volatile. I'm going to skip down a little bit. What hangs over the situation is a general lack of bourgeoisie consensus, with different sectors of capital and different wings of the same sectors wanting opposing things in a moment of historic U.S. hegemonic weakness, a simmering crisis of faith from the masses around their traditional political leadership, and an increasing questioning of capitalist greed. Fundamentally, there isn't a clear roadmap out of the current moment. Trump won in part as the change candidate, and he is bringing big changes. As his inclusion of tech billionaires and nominations of people like Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard show, it's just not clear on how these changes will work and how long they will stand. Trump's chaos was disqualifying for the bourgeoisie in 2020, but it is now more accepted. What this chaos will do within the context of lack of consensus is profoundly unclear and also places limits on the Trump administration. Going down just a little bit more. The economic program that Trump and his allies seems to have agreed on will be summed up as austerity without rights. Put another way, as an episode of the Dig podcast pointed out, it's obscene luxury for the rich and austerity for the working class. The Republicans add this to their profound anti-rights agenda. It's not a fluke that one of the first pieces of legislation to pass the House is a ban on trans women and girls playing women's sports. This combination promises extremely dire conditions for the working class and oppressed as social services are stripped away and rights are revoked. It's important to understand when looking at the incoming administration that Trump, despite his bluster and the bourgeoisie media's reporting, did not win a mandate in the election. He won a relatively narrow victory with fewer votes than Biden in 2020. It's unclear how much of the social base he's collected around him like him for his ultra reactionary policies or just because he represents a change from the despised Biden administration. The real life experience that the masses are about to have with Trump 2.0 is going to be crucial at determining how much space Trump has to operate in. Something that is left out of most discussions of the coming Trump administration by the bourgeoisie press is the overall shifts in the consciousness of the masses and the opportunities these shifts provide for class struggle. There have been huge shifts in consciousness around Palestine, a refusal to pay for the bourgeoisie's crisis and the rich, as the recent celebration of Luigi Mangione indicates, which are simmering under the surface of the situation and can manifest rapidly. Trump does not have an open path to implementing his right wing agenda. There are forces in society that have begun to rear their head that can stop him. The new labor movement, deeply impacted by COVID and Black Lives Matter, has had experience going on strike, and the Palestine movement helped further politicize unions. The labor movement can inject itself into the national situation and disrupt Trump's plans. Additionally, social movements can reemerge and fight Trump's imperialism and domestic attacks in the streets. The working class and the oppressed don't need to sit idly by while austerity is imposed and our rights are stripped away. We can fight back and change the course of history. Again, if you want to read that article for yourself, that is from LeftVoice. Trump has no mandate, and his incoming administration is full of contradictions. We will link to all that in the show notes. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WITR or online at widerfm.org. You can also find us on Facebook and YouTube, as well as the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast. You can find on most podcasting apps. Keep your dial locked. We are Media Cyphers. We will be right back. Your only source for political revolution. Hello, everybody out there in Radio Land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. So my co-host Lawrence is going to be joining us around 1 o'clock. We're going to break down, well, we got a lot to talk about. Again, the inauguration, talk about kind of our post-mortem of the Biden administration. In this 10 minutes, I do want to focus on a story that I think is really important and also kind of sets the stage for the importance of independent media over the next 4 years, including our little show, but also a lot of the, alternative independent media that we draw a lot of our coverage from. I'm thinking of, The Intercept, TruthOut, LeftVoice, Democracy Now, The Nation, In These Times, um, Common Dreams. I'll think of a whole list and present them, but all of those outlets are going to have outsized importance because this article I'm about to read for you, legacy media is really ready to kind of kiss the ring when it comes to Trump this time. And I'm going to read a bit from an article by Ellie Mistal. The media is giving away its rights even before Trump tries to take them. Donald Trump is a clear and present danger to the freedom of the press. He tells his violent and rabid supporters that the media is an enemy of the people, sues news outlets over coverage he doesn't like, and constantly threatens to change the laws to limit freedom of the press. Still, for all of his rhetorical bluster and real legal aggression, he is not the greatest danger to the press. That dystopian honor goes to the people who own the press themselves. In December, ABC News settled a defamation lawsuit brought by Trump, agreeing to offer a written apology and make a $15 million charitable contribution to Trump's future presidential foundation and museum. The settlement was rightly viewed as a major legal victory for the grifter in chief, but it also, and more crucially, represented a massive failure by the news media that is simply unwilling to defend itself against Trump's attacks. Trump's lawsuit concerned comments made by This Week anchor George Stephanopoulos. During a March 2024 interview, he referred to the case brought against Trump by E. Jean Carroll, noting that judges and two separate juries had found Trump liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape. Stephanopoulos' use of the term rape was technically inaccurate. The jury in the Carroll case found Trump liable for sexual abuse and awarded her $5 million, but he did not find him liable for rape. Under New York state law, rape requires penetration by a penis, while sexual abuse does not. But in the common parlance, the events Carroll described, for which Trump was held liable, are often referred to as that. You don't have to take my word for it. In 2023, Judge Lewis Kaplan, a Bill Clinton appointee, dismissed a defamation lawsuit Trump had brought against Carroll, writing, "Indeed, the jury's verdict in Carroll establishes the fact that Mr. Trump raped her, albeit digitally rather than with his penis. Thus, it establishes against him the substantial truth of Miss Carroll's rape accusations." Kaplan's ruling could have been applied to the Trump lawsuit against Stephanopoulos, but in July 2024, Judge Cecilia Altanaga, a George W. Bush appointee, refused to dismiss Trump's case, arguing that Stephanopoulos' statements dealt with not with the public's usage of that term, but the jury's consideration of it during a formal legal proceeding. While I found Altanaga's ruling dubious, it nonetheless set the stage for a discovery process, during which Trump's legal team would have had access to internal ABC News emails, a trial, and perhaps a lengthy appeals process, by which point Trump would be a sitting president again. Instead of fighting Trump, ABC News and its parent company, Disney, decided to capitulate. Never mind that Trump's case was weak, even after Altanaga's ruling. The bar to defame a public figure is very high in this country. Indeed, First Amendment protections are arguably at their strongest when talking about politicians and certainly the president. To win, Trump's legal team would have had to prove not only that Stephanopoulos' statement was false and defamatory, something that would be up to a jury to determine, but also that Stephanopoulos acted with malice. Never mind also that Disney is a global behemoth with a market cap of more than $200 billion, meaning that even if Trump had ultimately been successful in his claims, the legal damages would not have been financially crippling. Trump is already widely regarded by people likely to be watching Stephanopoulos as a man of low character who can't be trusted. While defaming such a person as possible, it's hard to come up with a theory of how Stephanopoulos' words damage Trump's already scummy reputation beyond slap on the wrist money. What makes the ABC case so troubling is that is a craven a display of preemptive obedience as it was hardly singular. We have seen a lot of this cowardice from the media these past few months, from the decisions of the owners of the Los Angeles Times and the Washington Post to forego endorsing a presidential candidate. And by the way, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. Jeff Bezos was sitting behind Trump at the inauguration, just so you can make some connections there. Anyway, to a choice of morning show host Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski to travel to Mar-a-Lago to kiss Trump's ring. The most powerful forces in the media seem to have decided that keeping Trump happy is their prime mission. Of course, Trump has taken all this media genuflecting as license to go farther. Just before the election, he filed a $10 billion lawsuit against CBS, claiming the network had edited its 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris to make her look good. And in December, he sued the Des Moines Register, its parent company, Gannett, and the pollster Ann Seltzer for publishing her poll suggesting Trump was going to lose Iowa. The poll turned out to be incredibly wrong, but threatening a news organization because its polling was wrong illustrates just how fiercely Trump plans to harass media outlets that don't give him the narratives he wants. Still, as bad as harassment is, it's not the same as changing the law to weaken press freedoms. Before his first term, Trump talked about opening up the libel laws to make it easier for people like him to sue the press. He did not, however, make good on that promise, admittedly a hard task given that libel laws are determined primarily by the states. And while some judges appear squishy about press freedoms, there hasn't been a major rescission of First Amendment protection since Trump emerged on the scene. The law, in broad strokes, has not changed on core free press issues. But the law does not have to change if the press will not fight for its freedoms. If Jeff Bezos, Disney, and Warner Brothers Discovery, which owns CNN, simply cower in the face of Trump, he and his loyal Supreme Court justices do not have to change the laws to silence the press. Trump does not have to impose a new regime of censorship if the press censors itself first. And that, I believe, is what we are witnessing now. A press that gives away its First Amendment rights before Trump takes them away. A press that will not speak truth to power if power threatens to kick their owners off a cocktail party list or gum up their operations. The debasement of the press will continue until readers and viewers reject the media that would rather lie to them than tell the truth to Trump. The people who run these publications and news organizations are betting that we won't. And that was an article from The Nation by Ellie Mistel. The media is giving away its rights even before Trump tries to take them. We're going to take another quick little break. We will be back. Still got a lot to talk about here on the show. Y'all listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org, your source for political revolution. And don't forget, you can find us online. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and you can find the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast on most podcasting apps. Please like, subscribe, and all that, especially in times like these where we need independent voices in media more than ever. Hello, everybody out there in Radio Land. We are back. Y'all are listening to well, hello, everybody out there in Radio Land. We are back. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. Joined now by my co host, Lawrence. Lawrence, how are you holding up on this very, very cold Tuesday we got here?
Man, this is surviving. Is this the first? This is our first show of the year, right?
Well, we had our holiday special. I was on last week too, just going solo, but
Yeah,
this is our first day two of what is it? Biftan and fascism round two, I guess. I don't know. But
basically.
yeah, yeah. So we were talking a little bit during the break. We got a lot to talk about. Be diving in, kind of doing our post mortem of the Biden years and talking about what happened yesterday. Also, I know I at the top of the show I talked a bit about it, but I know we got to talk a little bit about honoring really the more important thing that happened yesterday is MLK Day. Um,
Yes, absolutely. And also things that's going on around the world, including the deal with Gaza. There's a lot to talk about.
oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Hmm.
let's get the silly stuff out the way first. Um, I need CNN, MSNBC. I need I need a lot of mainstream media presses to come sit at the front of the congregation because we need to have a conversation. Um, yeah. So let's get the main thing. Let's get the main thing out of the way, right? Uh, 45 came back into power, right? He's back in
Hmm.
power. Now he's 47, right?
Yeah. Mm.
Um, he had his inauguration. If you took time to watch his inauguration, the symbolism before we even get to what he said, the symbolism of it all should speak volumes to you, especially if you're one of his supporters. There were a large swath of his supporters that had to stand out in the cold, waiting for him to come out and address them. And he didn't. They moved the speech inside. The oligarchs that bought off this election had better seats for his inauguration than his own cabinet.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
that like they had better seats at his inauguration than his own cabinet members. That should tell you everything that you need to know about the system and where we're at. But outside of that, when he did actually address his supporters, because I did see some bits and pieces of it. Oh yeah, he is letting it all hang out. This is the beginning states of fascism. Like there wasn't any guardrails. He was like, oh no, when I said retribution, fear and retribution, oh he meant that. It's going the next 4 years is going to be very bad for everyone. Um, but the thing that makes me the most upset is that when we see something objectively that's bad, we need to call it what it is. And the billionaire that bought off our election, Elon Musk, who turned Twitter into a right wing Reddit post, like basically made it so that every other post that you saw, even if it was political or not, was something from a right winger, did the Nazi salute at the event. Like they're like, yeah, they're not holding back. They're letting it all hang out. And I'm here like, oof,
Yeah, and I
we
think like the really just to kind of cut focus, media ciphers is the name of the show. Just to cut through the BS for everybody. Yeah, that's what it was. It's very obvious that's what it was. But as it's like goes back to Orwell. It's like the first thing the party said was like deny the evidence of your eyes and ears. Anybody who saw that, he did it with his whole chest. And this shouldn't be surprising. This is a guy who has openly shared alt-right neo-Nazi memes constantly. He endorsed the AfD party in Germany, which is like a far-right neo-Nazi party. His family has a lot of those ties if you really like dig a little bit deeper. So the only surprising thing is like y'all shouldn't be surprised. He was just like the really what should be most shocking about that is I guess like Elon apparently felt like he is in such a position of power that he can just do that at a presidential inauguration event. Um,
so we okay, so because this is the thing. We said at the rally in New York that it was like the Nazi rally back in the 60s, right? We compared it back to that moment. We talked about like yeah, he has now said he wants to influence other elections overseas. and one of them is the far right elections in Germany, which with the Nazi Party has now rebranded themselves, right? They're the anti-immigration party, right? And now he does that, and you have mainstream media trying to say what you saw, like he did a weird salute with his chest. What you saw really um wasn't a Nazi salute. It was, and they tried to explain it away that what we saw wasn't what it is, and it was ridiculous.
I think one thing I've seen from some of his people online is like, oh, it was a Roman salute. And it's like, what was the Nazi salute based off of? Anybody
No,
out there doesn't know their history is it's
yeah,
yeah, it's like that's a fig leaf of a fig leaf, man. Like that is it is literally, yeah, it is literally the Nazi salute. I think probably like I saw this the Anti-Defamation League who
that was the
yeah,
thing for me that I find the most troubling. The Anti-Defamation League absolutely needs to come sit at the front of the church in the congregation. We have to have this conversation.
because
Just still line,
ostensibly
just
their entire existence is based on calling out anti-Semitism, right? Right? That's what it's supposed to be.
yes.
And it's the same group that has compared like wearing a keffiyeh to wearing a swastika. You have a
They
guy doing a Nazi salute, and what they basically wrote was like, we're glad people are concerned, but he wasn't actually doing that. He just got really excited. Are
this
you
is the
kidding me?
same. These are the
Uh,
same people who was okay with the TikTok ban because TikTok because people on TikTok was pro Palestine. These are the same people that were trying to get Hassan Piker banned off of the internet because of his stance his stance on uh on Palestine. They've spent the last few months destroying the credibility of that organization, and I like the Anti Defamation League. There are times when they have done good work, but me and you have called them out a number of times when they tried to destroy Ilhan Omar, when they have um when they tried to say that she was being anti-Semitic with the stuff that she was saying about lobbying in America. Like there's been a number of times when the Anti-Defamation League, has had too much dip on their chip, as my uncle would say, right?
mhm.
But now it is
The
it's
message, yeah,
too much.
the message that basically sends, and like again, like they're any good work they've done in the past is almost just like retroactively thrown in the dustbin because the message that basically sends is if you have $1 billion and you support Israel's colonial project, then you can Heil Hitler as much as you please, and we're not going to say anything about it. That's basically what
Yeah, yeah,
between the lines. That's what it was. Yeah.
we're going to look the other way as long as you look the other way on Israel. Like
Mm.
that's pretty much what the crux of what they're doing now, and it is disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And I don't say that, and I'm not saying that to discredit or to belittle the Anti Defamation League. They have done the Lord's work a number of times, right? It's just when it's already going to be hard enough to deal with the fact that on on Trump's first day, he pardoned a large number of the January 6th rioters.
Hmm.
It's already hard enough. It's already hard enough to that we are going to have to deal with the deranged fascists that are going to be in our body politics, right? For those people, for these people to now try to whitewash his insanity only makes our jobs harder, especially on a day, especially on MLK Day. And that's the other part. It was MLK Day. A man that most right wingers would call a social justice warrior that they would that they have tried to whitewash to say that that his cause would have been a conservative one. Like, no, we're talking about his legacy of racial equality, justice, truth, reconciliation, all of that stuff. To have to have our establishment in our country be everything that he fought against, and then the mainstream media bend the knee to it is was upsetting to say the least.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, again, I forgot to mention he did mention MLK in his in his speech.
Yeah, I saw
Um,
that.
just absolutely gross. And yeah, as we talked about at the top of the show around 12 o'clock, MLK in the last years of his life in particular was really trying to, again, the Poor People's Campaign overtly called for a form of democratic socialism in the US. So yeah, again, that whitewashing is particularly egregious coming out of, what basically just like a bunch of, hyper-capitalist neo-segregationists, coming out. Like again, I think there was some executive or one of the deluge of executive orders is trying to like clamp down against DEI and that kind of thing going on, at least as far as like government institutions go. But yeah, it was pretty painful to watch. I didn't actually watch it. I read the transcripts because like I'm not a masochist. But
I watched I watched Hassan Piker and Kyle Kalinske and a couple other political commentators who I like break it down for me because like how you said, uh I needed some peace.
yeah,
I needed some peace the other day, and I was like, I don't want to do any more psychic damage to me. I
yeah,
didn't want any more psychic damage. But the thing that I did want to say, I want to quote Reverend William Barber. You cannot bring up MLK's legacy and then be against everything that he stood for. So MLK stood for universal health care, universal basic income, universal housing. Um, he was anti-war. He also spoke on the plight of Palestinians as well. Like MLK uh was for uh justice, equality, and freedom for all oppressed people. And those in this administration and the people who are supposed to be telling us the truth are and have been fighting against every part of that legacy. Every single part. It's not even close.
yeah, absolutely. And some of the things I reflect on just because I guess we can talk a little bit about the inauguration itself. We have been, and um, some of my observations. Again, part of what MLK was pushing, especially in his early years, was the idea of like an actual like multiracial democracy that um, a lot of particularly like people like Tom Paine. I don't think too highly of a lot of the other founding fathers, but especially him. He was very sincere about creating like real democracy, and MLK had that vision of like a multiracial democracy, and what Trump seems to be dragging us back to, because I know there's been a lot of discussion about how we're entering like this Nazi Germany moment, and I need people to understand like things are bad, but they are bad in a distinctly American way. We're
Yeah.
like going back to Andrew Jackson. This is kind of
Yeah.
what's going on,
Yeah.
yeah, in his speech he talked about like manifest destiny. This is stuff that you learn about in school as like America's fiercely colonial days. And that's I think like that's something that we should pay attention to is we are kind of turning the clock back to a form of not just neo-colonialism where we're putting economic pressure on countries to do our bidding. We're talking about overt colonialism. We're talking about sending troops to go seize the Panama Canal or Greenland. And
Yeah. Oh, wait. I'm glad you said that. I'm so sorry.
you know,
There's been a lot of commentators who believe that we can find solidarity with people on the right. And look, I believe in having conversations with people who you don't agree with on everything, right? I agree with that. You should go to Lions Den, go in the Lions Den and explain your point of view. But when you say that a person is anti-war, that they're anti-war, yet their goal is to take the Panama Canal, to take Greenland. You call the president of Canada the mayor of Canada because you want to steal their land. That's not a pro peace candidate. That is a colony. That is a colonizer. That is
yeah, yeah.
definition.
And something I heard from some of the more like kind of woo-woo people who voted for Trump is it's like, oh, Biden's gonna start World War III. Biden's gonna start World War III. And it's like, you know what? There were points in his presidency where things were very tense, but like I talk about starting World War III. What do you think's going to happen if he actually tries to send troops to Panama or Greenland or wherever? Like, do you think that the rest of the West is going to roll over? That that is a recipe for some like a level of geopolitical disaster we have not seen in the better part of 70 years. Um, again,
Doug, if you think things are bad now, wait till he tries to execute that plan of yeah, we're just gonna take Greenland. We're just gonna take these countries because they would be better with America. Who said that? Who who are you and why do you believe this? Like what is wrong with you?
yeah. I wanted to point to, and again, if he causes more instability in Latin America, more instability in Panama, that is going to again lead to more immigration, which again he is clamping down on. And I did want to bring this up because, like, let's not forget how stupid this man is. So, a direct quote from his speech: "The current system fails to protect our magnificent law-abiding American citizens. Provides sanctuary and protection for dangerous criminals, many from prisons and mental institutions." When Trump here, so we talked about this on the show. The last 4 years, there's the term seeking asylum. When immigrants seek asylum, they're seeking refuge from oppressive countries, which, side note, typically are caused by the geopolitical decisions of the US government. People seek asylum. I kind of theorized, he keeps talking about Hannibal Lecter coming on board. Like, what? This is a non sequitur. This doesn't make sense. What the heck is he talking about? This man thinks seeking asylum, he thinks that literally means people are coming from mental institutions across the border. And, I had moments like, he's not actually that dumb, right?
No, he
It's right
is.
there in the
No.
speech. He's that stupid. He is that stupid. He thinks asylum means like Arkham Asylum. He's God.
Like the man believes look
Batman villains are
what
crossing the border, folks.
yeah,
It's
yeah, but
oh god.
it is the it is the worst case scenario of the worst case scenario. That's what it is. It is we and this is the thing. Twitter, Instagram, and this also goes back to the TikTok ban. Also is tied into the TikTok ban. You saw all of those robber barons that are now giving him millions of dollars. He raised what was it, 300 million for this inauguration, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
people kissing the ring.
Approximately $250 million, which, by the way, folks, like it's more typical for an inauguration to raise between like 25, maybe 50 million on the high end. Trump raised 100 million the last time, even that was criticized. Like, so it's a very, when you talk about money in politics, like, you might as well be like ringing the carnival bell. Like, yeah, it's these
Yeah,
people
it
are just
is.
hand forking over money for influence.
Yeah, and that's the only reason why you're doing it. You're not there was a bundler, I forgot what they are. A person that was with the Democratic campaign that uh raised over $100 million for VP Harris and for Biden, and now they are giving money to Trump. Now they're a full MAGA person. And again, the only reason why you do that type of capitulation when you said that you're a lifelong Democrat, that you care about democracy and the things that we hold true, but you give this incoming president millions of dollars, you're only doing that because you want to influence their ear. You know, you don't want them to regulate you. You don't want them to put any sanctions on you or your company. You don't want them involved in your business. So you're paying off the cockers. That's what you're doing. It's no different. It's no different than Nino Brown or any other mobster and any other gangster movie that we've seen when we were kids, right? Of them being like, "Hey, I got cops. I got cops on the payroll." That's what you're doing. You're paying off people so that they are no longer in your business.
Hmm. I also
And
wanted, oh, I wanted to point to something he said in his speech too about, um, uh, so he's talking about censorship and free speech. We got an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech. And I thought this was important to talk to, especially with what happened in the last week with TikTok and stuff, and point out that again, this free speech. What most of the right defines as free speech is just the right to say bigoted things wherever they want. It's the
they
right
just want to
to
say
be a
they
bigot
just
without
want to say
consequences.
yeah, they just want
Yeah.
to say the N word without being kicked off Twitter. That's about it.
And I also want to point out we are going to be entering an era of state censorship, but the way it's going to function is it's maybe a little bit different than what you're familiar with, like when you typical authoritarian regime, because it's been outsourced. That state censorship privatized, because what the incoming Trump administration has done is they have gotten all of the big owners of social media to circle the wagons around his administration. Meta, Twitter, both thoroughly in Trump's pocket, as well as now TikTok. Because again, let's explain the okey doke that just happened. Trump bans TikTok in 2020.
Oh
Courts
no, he
appellate.
said Trump Trump wants to ban TikTok. And like before we even get there,
Mhm.
Democrats, this shows the inaptitude of the Democratic Party. You let the Republicans are the ones who said they wanted to ban TikTok because they saw the writing on the wall that young people in this country are not following or listening to the propaganda that on Gaza. They are saying no, what we are seeing is a genocide. They've been saying it for years, right? Good for the young people who are on TikTok and that they don't want to hear that garbage anymore, right?
Mhm.
Here's the problem. And Mitt Romney and others said it out loud. They said the quiet part out loud. We have the 80 uh the APAC lobby and others said no, we have to ban TikTok. This is a problem. This is a problem for our image, right?
Mhm.
The Republicans are all for it. Right wing is all for it. And then the Democrats jump on. Why do the Democrats jump on board with this ban? It's because some of those Democrats also take the same money from that lobbying group, that same lobbying group. And now they agree with the right wing on a issue that's not popular to the American people. The American people don't want this. The American people want to continue to have their free speech. So this is the first thing. We can burn the American flag in this country. We can say ACAB. We don't like the police. We can say all these things. because this is our right to do so. These are things that are protected by our First Amendment, right? This
Mhm.
is an anti-First Amendment move. When the government says we don't like what you're saying on a social media platform, so we're going to ban the platform. Now you have given the Republicans a win because now Trump's going to be like, hey, I actually don't want to ban it. I was just joking. Guys, y'all can have your platform. I don't really care. You just gave the right wingers a win. Now, all the people, all the young people who would have justifiably be angry at the right wing for censoring their speech, now are mad at you.
Yep. Hmm.
Are now mad at you because you gave them a reason to say, hey, you know what? We didn't. The American people, the American government, they didn't want to solve. They didn't want to solve the opioid crisis, even though that's killed millions of Americans. They don't want to solve gun violence, which has killed millions of Americans, including children. They didn't want to fix the fact that a lot of cities in our country doesn't have clean drinking water because of lead pipes and other reasons, because of our failing infrastructure. There's a number of things that our government could have done to show that they actually have the best interests of the American people, And what did they do? They banned a social media platform because they didn't like what people were saying about Gaza.
Hmm.
It is one of the dumbest things that I have ever seen in my entire
Yep. And if you recall, just a couple days ago, so Twitter shuts down for less than 24 hours, and then we get a message on there that might have been has been just like, our glorious leader, President Trump, is restoring TikTok as we speak. And what y'all need to understand is that in the US, we're not going to have state-controlled media. It's going to be media controlled by corporations who are
life.
loyal to capitalism's current boss, which is the Trump administration at this moment. So TikTok, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with TikTok, but in my guess, it's going to be bought by somebody or some company that is friendly to Donald Trump and his administration and is going to rein in the algorithms a little bit so we don't have some of this messy free speech getting amplified that, exposes things about Gaza, the US government, etc. Already, um, and I wanted to bring this up. TikTok, the newly restored American TikTok, um, is restricting Americans from looking up things like fascism and Donald Trump rigged election. You can actually compare the results between one device in America and one in the UK or the rest of the world, and the one in America says no results found. You've also, again, you've got Elon Musk and Zuckerberg, obviously, who've kind of pledged their loyalty to the Trump administration. So, free speech, again, will exist, but it is going to be minimized. It's going to be, again, deprioritized in the algorithms, all that stuff. And the speech that it has the approval of the Trump administration is going to be amplified. Um, and this kind of goes to what you need to look out for in these next few years. It is the legacy media, which is going to muzzle and censor itself out of deference to Trump's power. That is going to include increasingly social media. And, again, that's why independent media is going to be so important and why, again, the instruments that the government is going to use against us aren't it, I don't expect like state troopers to come and drag me out of the studio one day. What I do see happening though is, again, Department of Education is in shambles. Some local billionaire buys up the university, and maybe they're like, hey, I don't want that guy on your radio station talking all this crap about us. And then I don't have a
Pretty
show.
much,
Yeah.
pretty much. It's it is it is the biggest form of overreach when you think about what as a institution, what we can actually do to improve people's lives. It goes against all of the things that we could actually do to be to create positive change. All the things that MLK was talking about. about how the government can be working to make the lives of American people better. Yeah, this spits in the face of all of
Yeah, absolutely.
that.
And I mean, I braved the blizzard to go get groceries yesterday, and lo and behold, the eggs were still like close to $5. So, uh, you know,
Oh, dog.
ugh,
The uncaged. If I was just in the grocery store. Uncaged eggs is, I think it's close to $10, man.
yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
So,
It's
and
it's
I'm
a
sorry if you believe that line about cheaper eggs and gas. Like, I've got a fridge to sell you in Alaska, y'all. Like, this
yeah.
billionaire is not going to lower your grocery prices.
Oh, that also that's. I'm glad you just said that. His tariffs, right? Remember, his tariffs are going to bring is going to bring down costs for Americans. Well, studies have showed, recent studies showed by the AP and other news organizations that his tariffs has actually started to negatively impact uh, uh, manufacturing here in this country. The main reason why it's negatively impacting is because countries like China that are affected by the the tariffs. What they're doing now is just having their product go through another country. They're doing a workaround. So instead of it going through just one organization or one country, right? They're sending it through multiple organizations and multiple countries so they can get around the tariffs.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which again is going
So
to add, obviously they're going to pass that cost on to the consumer. And
so now so now this is the thing that makes it such a crazy situation. Because guess who now has to pay the cost of them going through another country? We
oh,
do.
please tell
The
us,
American
please.
people.
Oh.
We do. The American the American people.
Yeah.
So the cost of goods like metals for screws or metals for like screws or piping for like bicycles and things of that nature. All of those all of those things are now being passed on to us because of Donald Trump's stupid tariffs. It is it is some of the least thought out things that you can describe. Like you would think, hey, he actually must have thought about these things, right? He's put some effort into thinking if these things are going to be if these actions are good ideas, if it will actually be effective. Nope, not at all.
No,
Not
no,
close. Not close. Not close.
no. So, in these last 20 minutes, I thought maybe we could pivot, look at how did we get here? Like all the madness that's come out in the last day, the deluge of like, oh, trying to chop down birthright citizenship, this kind of
Oh
attack on
yeah.
trans rights, everything else. Who put us in this position? And I think we should talk a little bit about the Biden administration and give our kind of post mortem on it. And um, you know, I'm going to break it down in some more detail here, but there's been a lot of discussion about why exactly Trump won the election. There's a really good piece um, from Drop Site News, as I think is Ryan Grimm, who pointed out,
Shout out to
according to
Ryan Grimm, man. Ryan Grimm's been out here doing the Lord's work.
oh yeah, absolutely. But he pointed out that if parsing through the data, the single biggest reason Biden voters did not turn back out in 2024 was the genocide in Gaza. We found out that it was approximately um, 29% cited the ongoing onslaught as the top reason they did not come back out and vote in 2024. Now, the second biggest reason was also the economy. So it probably didn't help that the Harris campaign spent the last couple months gaslighting everybody. It's like the economy's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, let us understand the single biggest way that the Biden administration fumbled the bag, and it came back to haunt them, was its deference to America's foreign policy of the last 70 years of always, always, always kind of, uh, keep, giving Israel what it wanted. Not always, though. I mean, even like Reagan back in the day was willing to put some pressure on them. But we can point out a lot of things about how the Biden administration failed and set us up for, fed us into the coming years of overt fascism. But I think it needs to be reckoned with, especially some of your more liberal friends, that that was the single biggest reason. And I'd say, like, in these dark times, that almost gives me a little bit of hope. The idea that the failure of the Biden administration to recognize the genocide for what it was, to put the brakes on it, to basically feed the Israeli genocide machine as much money as weapons as it wanted. That was the thing that made them lose. I think it speaks to a growing international solidarity and consciousness. That is a good thing. I mean, again, it is a very glass half full thing to say in the wake of everything that we're going to be dealing with. But it does expose the imperial rots. And let's keep in mind, Trump did not win a mandate or a plurality of anything. More people voted for somebody else than voted for him. And the vast majority of people stayed home on the couch. If the couch was running for president, it would have won in a landslide.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which I think does go to speak to people's general dissatisfaction with the system, a system that Biden was not able to resuscitate, was not able to keep on life supports. I think
Hey, but there,
the
hey, but there are
biggest
people.
campaign promise that he kept was nothing will fundamentally change, and we are now all paying for the cost of that promise. Not to say he didn't do a few progressive things, especially earlier in his administration, but I think it ended up being just too little, too late. Lawrence, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, 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 no. Go ahead. I was interrupting you. What you said was absolutely correct. I just wanted to add to that it's not like we didn't see this coming. During the primary, around 20 to between 10 and 30% of the Democratic voters, around 20%, like mostly it was 20%, like Michigan, Wisconsin, and the swing states, was telling the Democratic Party, we will not vote for you if you do not change your policy on Gaza, change your policy on funding this genocide. We saw the actions of that genocide in real time, right? Yet, for some reason, we we also saw what happens when you care more about when you are a politician that cares more about what your donors want than what the American people want. And this result shouldn't have been shocking to anybody because this is what happens. The issue, and also, it's not like VP Harris did not know this. It's not that the Democratic Party did not know this. They were arrogant to say, "Hey, what are you going to do? You're going to vote for the other person?" And most Americans said, "Hey, we don't have to vote for the other person. We also just don't have to vote.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We know that the other person is going to be worse, but since you're in power, you can do something positive to help." And the fact that our our politicians was like, "Nah, dog, you're cool. We're
Well,
cool."
think about it too. It's like all they could promise really was things would get worse more slowly because even the rights of people who are under attack so direly from the Trump administration, they were already seeing the slow motion repeal of their rights. Like people who vote on immigration, what do you have to look forward to when the Democratic Party is presenting themselves as border hawks? If you're trans, you're looking around at state after state after state, trying to ban you out of existence, and leaders in the Democratic Party, like, listening to consultants who are like, maybe we should also be bigots. I don't know. Yeah. Again, Biden really doing virtually nothing. You go back to the convention, there was not a single trans speaker. They barely talked about
There was
LGBTQ issues when,
there
again,
wasn't a they had a vetted speech from a Palestinian representative, and they still chose to give that particular demographic the middle finger.
yeah, yeah. You had Harris, who infamously said to the tail end of the election when questioned directly on trans issues, I will follow the letter of the law. You mean like the bigoted anti-trans laws that have been popping up all over the country? So again, yeah, somebody whose main pitch is like, I'm not gonna oppress you as much as the other guy, that's not something that gets people out to vote. It
Yeah,
just doesn't.
that yeah. The other part of the other part of that skill gap in the skill tree is that we needed we needed someone who was willing to be different on these issues, to speak to the needs of the American people. They chose to give us nothing. Nothing. There was nothing to fight for in this situation that will make our lives better. They chose to say, "Hey, it's either us or the road," and people chose the road, man.
Hmm.
People chose the road, and we can be mad at all those people who chose the road. You can be mad at everyone who's like, "Hey, y'all wasn't listening to us anyway, so why do we care?" Yeah, but if you're a politician, it's your job to convince people and have them care. Our party chose not to do that. Our
Hmm.
party chose not to do that, and that's the sad part about this whole situation. So much so that you even have people in the Biden administration now who still are saying that he believes he could have won. In what universe? In what universe where are they getting this information that he believes that he still could have won? And they are still saying this stuff now or believing this stuff now, even though leaving office, he's less popular leaving office today than his predecessor was when he left office.
That's saying something because, like, again, Trump bungled a pandemic, and that was the year of the uprisings. So, like, that is saying a lot. Oh God,
Oh,
yeah.
also, I just want to say this before because I know we gotta get off pretty soon. I just want to say this: when we see another uprising of a Me Too movement or a BLM movement or something like that happening in this country, I don't want to hear anything from the right wing. Trump 47 pardoned the January 6th rioters. The January 6th rioters beat and killed police officers. They beat police officers with a Blue Lives Matter flag. They assaulted they assaulted people. Well, they assaulted officers because they did not like the peaceful transfer of power that was trying to go on. They did not believe the results. And because of their lack in faith of not believing in the results, they armed officers. So I don't want to hear anything from them about law and order again. I don't want to hear anything about law and order. I don't want to hear anything about, oh man, this is we need to come together for the spirit of democracy. Oh no. Oh no. Y'all made your bed with these fascists. You need to lie in it. You need to lie in it. Because next time when there's another January 6th, where they feel like they can go and storm the Capitol without getting any prosecution. That was the largest uh prosecution and manhunt in American history because the FBI had to go after all the people who did that garbage. Yeah, look at your own people. Look at your own people because they are the ones that did it. They got away with it. They got away with some of the most horrific, one of the most horrific moments in American history, and 45 pardons.
Yeah, and I think like something that I think people should keep in mind, again, try not to despair too much, but I mean, it's a bad historical moment. A commentator pointed out that they had like 14 heroes, quote unquote heroes, who's basically part of the main leadership that planned the attempted coup. Um, and again, that if you know your 14 words thing, that's a big white supremacist trope.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, again, the Klansmen are inside the house.
Yeah.
Really it is. And one thing that does give me some hope though is, as much as I'm sure Trump is going to deputize a lot of these fascist goons to try to stir up trouble in the streets and stuff. A lot of the tension, a lot of the problems that are going to be coming up the next 4 years are very, at least at the level of the populace, very bipartisan in nature. We look at what happened with Luigi last year. It was everybody across the political spectrum was upset about upset about healthcare. Climate stuff is going to be impacting everybody, blue state, red state. There's disaster is coming your way. And as we talked about these, all the stuff, a lot of the economic populist promises Trump made are just absolutely impossible in face of what him and the Project 2025 people are actually planning to do. So I want you all to have a little patience with some of your relatives and whatnot, maybe voted for the Cheeto because they thought they get cheaper eggs. When they discover that there ain't no cheaper nothing coming on the way, it's going to be kind of fall on organizers, people on the left, to receive those people to help them make the connections they need to make. Because it's weird because as dark as a moment as this is, I've actually got a lot more hope for a kind of re-emerging class consciousness than I've had since about 2016. Because once some of these kind of MAGA populists realize how to the extent that they've been bamboozled, there is an opening there. There is an opening there for, I think, some real kind of like economic populism to reassert itself. Because, again, we see liberalism has completely run out of gas. I think
Oh,
my prediction in the
brother,
next 4 years
brother,
is sort of,
you are much more optimistic than I am.
uh,
Yeah.
I'm
Like,
saying,
no,
maybe.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that to piss on your parade. I'm not trying to do that at all. I'm just like there. There is no evidence that I've seen that the MAGA cult will do anything except what the dear leader tells them.
Oh, no.
Remember,
I
these are
guess
the
I should
same.
specify like
Yeah,
the people in the cult are going to stay in that cult, but we do need to keep in mind that is a very small actual percentage of the population. And
got you.
there are a lot of people who, again, voted for Trump who are not necessarily cult members. And that's more the sort of people I'm talking about. Although, again, it is kind of, again, it is, I think it presages what we're going to see the next 4 years, where Trump had all of his billionaire friends sitting right behind him in the peanut gallery, while literally all of his diehard kind of petty bourgeois supporters were literally left out in the cold. So
Facts.
yeah.
No,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and this is the thing. Well, this is something on the reason why I was saying what I was saying. Look at the whole TikTok thing, right? You had people like Charlie Kirk and Marco Rubio, other war hawks, right? They were all saying, "Hey, we need to ban TikTok because the Chinese government is going to be hacking your is going to be taking control of your media or taking control of your data. Forgetting the fact that in 45's first 4 years, he allowed social media companies to own your data. You do not have data right now that you own when it comes to you being online. They've already given that away to multinational corporations. That's gone. You have no privacy rights when it comes to you being online. Any corporation can sell your data and for profit whenever they feel like it. That thing is gone, right?
Mhm.
The issue that I have is that right after 45 does that, right? He shows his whole tail, right? What happens? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They the cult moves along like we didn't just see this man destroy destroy his own campaign promise. Like they saw him do the thing, and then when he was like, hey, I'm saving it now, they're like, oh, hey, the God King is saving it now. The God King has spoken, he has now saved it, and now we're just gonna go along like we didn't see anything. Like, I have no faith that they're going to actually hold him accountable. It's actually the opposite for me. I think that they're just gonna be like, hey, he said it, we're here now, and we're gonna get over it. That's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm at with it.
I'll just close by saying I think that really just means it's all the more important that we spend this next 4 years to folks who are, not in the cult, so to speak, and people who are still kind of open, a little bit more open-minded, to educate, agitate, and organize. Because yeah, I think
Facts.
Trump relies on Americans having a very short historical memory, and that doesn't necessarily need to be the case, especially with a lot of young people. So we do need to wrap things up. Any parting thoughts before we close out the show, Lawrence?
No, I'm good, man. Hey, stay safe. If you are in the Midwest, stay warm. I know that in
Mhm.
Texas they also got snowed. I have um if you can try to if you can and you have some extra spare change, there are multiple organizations that are out there trying to help those who have been impacted by the forest fires and the fires out in California. If you have a few dollars that you can spare, please think of your other fellow citizens. Um, like, yeah, we like how you said, we have to organize and strategize to get through these rough times. Because right now, it's gonna get ugly. It's gonna get very ugly very soon.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. You can find us online at YouTube, Facebook, Radio Cyphers, Kalamazoo Podcast. Please, if you feel like, give us a like and subscribe. Independent media, more important than ever, especially coming up these next 4 years. Until next
Facts.
time, everybody, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.